Howdy folks, Tom Barbalet, aka Monty, doing a review of Warhammer Historical, The Great War. I think actually the second to last, they did a Second World War 15mm game, did they? Was it 20mm? It was some crazy thing that they did for the Second World War. But this was, I think, the second to last rule set that Warhammer Historical put out before they folded. And this one, I seem to recall I actually paid for on the Warhammer Historical site. And then they said that it completely sold out and was impossible to get. And I said, well, you've already taken my money, so find a copy, please. And they found this copy, which they sent to me. And I liked it so much, I actually bought, I think, 40 late war Germans, 40 late war British. I didn't end up buying any tanks, but I bought those set of miniatures, including heavy weapons. You can actually create two legitimate forces. Started painting them. And then I think we moved to the Bay Area. I did one YouTube video on my regular YouTube channel, which is my surname, Barbalet, Bravo Alpha Romeo, Bravo Alpha Lima Echo Tango, on this. And I was going to do more as I continued to paint figures and what have you, but the move basically squashed that. I think I have the figures here. I think I got them out of storage. But I just haven't been brave enough to look at them because there's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done. This is a very interesting period for me. Obviously, the First World War is going to be remembered over the next few years because it will be a century since it occurred. It's an interesting period for me historically because I find the history so gappy. Like the motivations just seem really curious to me, and the notion that one guy being killed in Sarajevo can bring about the discussions associated with movements of power and what have you. I talk a bit about this in my Stone Ape podcast, but yeah, I find it very fascinating, and I've been reviewing some anarchist folks in Bristol producing alternative First World War histories, which I find very fascinating. Anyway, that's a present-day account, which really didn't exist when I bought this rule set. So I'm going to have to work out how I can actually hold this and not thoroughly damage the spine. But it's basically slightly manipulated. I mean, my reading of it was that it was similar in some regard to 40k. But yeah, I'm not sure of the additions. It's not like Ancients where I can basically chart it. It could be more like the Lord of the Rings game because I've never had any primary contact with that aside from buying a box of miniatures once. So I'm not familiar with that rule system. It could be more based on that. I probably should look online before I actually, heaven forbid that I actually give accurate information in my YouTube video. But yeah, it's kind of browned corners, very much kind of, descriptive rule set. And, your standard Games Workshop-esque, lots of dice, lots of figures kind of rule set. There were just some beautiful miniatures for this period as well, which I think really captivated me, probably quite badly, associated with making purchases. And there's all the standard stuff associated with over the top, and I think some of my Germans are stormtroopers specifically, but I just love the aesthetic of particularly the later First World War period. I guess it's very much the Imperial Guard aesthetic in Warhammer 40k too in some areas. Just this kind of hopeless mass of humanity in the most brutal possible form of conflict. But your usual groups, your usual rules, command groups, vehicles, these kind of things. Some discussion of maneuvers and early history, org charts, which are obviously very popular. For the Games Workshop games and obviously some other games as well. But yeah, you get what you expect basically from this. There was a supplement that came a little later. I haven't actually had any exposure to the supplement. This provides enough information for you to generate quite comfortably to opposing forces. And I think basically this rule book is very well done in terms of the fact that it provides everything that you need. It also, I think, has some painting advice. I might have... Yes, here it is in the back. I actually went online, printed out the errata, and put the errata in the back. I don't know where you get this anymore. I don't know. You might be able to. I'm really hesitant to say it out loud, but you might be able to. Here's some of the images. I'm just going to miniatures. Standard Games Workshop miniature porn, basically. You might be able to find the rule set online. You might be able to find Games Workshop periodically releases their rule sets like this open source. They certainly did with Ancients in general. I'm not sure whether they'll do it with Great War. You might be able to find modifications of this. One of the reasons that I purchased this and the English Civil War and Armies of Chivalry is that I was working on a computer game at the time called Noble Warfare, which was based on my Noble 8 simulation. Noble Warfare was a strategic, primarily infantry-based, some cavalry, some other stuff, simulation where you just had kind of mass armies where each of the soldiers had defining rules, the generals had defining rules, and how would the battle evolve based on the characteristics of weaponry and things like that. And I used the Great War and Armies of Chivalry in particular to get a sense of, the broad statistics. I've never been a huge fan of the Games Workshop style, but ultimately, because I use six-sided dice, the statistics are very heavily swayed in that light. But yeah, I wanted to adapt a version of Noble Warfare for the First World War, and built this rule set initially based on that, but then just became kind of intoxicated with the aesthetic and the miniatures and these kind of things as these things happen. So yeah, I have two, 40-man each opposing sides, which I think I've done probably 2 colours on in both. I probably need to reacquire colours and restate it. I was thinking I'd probably just send it to one of the one of the many internet professional painting offerings and just get it completed at some stage so I could revisit it. But yeah, that's probably in the dim future. Probably just at some stage put it on eBay, I'm sure. Anyway. So this is the Great War, a relatively precursory review. I think it's very similar actually to the one that I put on my other channel 3 years ago. I'm hesitant to include a link to that. I may actually show some of the figures and partially painted stages as well. But anyway, Tom Barbalet in the Bay Area, signing out. aka Monty.